Tell me you really want me to stop, Ethan. Logan Hayes was standing close enough that I could see the uncertainty behind the confidence he wore every day, one hand resting against the hallway wall beside my shoulder, leaving me plenty of room to walk away. For once, he was not smiling. That was what unsettled me most. Logan always smiled when he teased me. He smiled when he stole the chair beside mine during Monday meetings, when he criticized my aggressively boring coffee order, and when he claimed my office playlist sounded like music designed for expensive elevators. For 6 months, annoying me had apparently been part of his job description. But that night, standing in the quiet hallway outside our company's celebration in downtown Chicago, there was no joke waiting behind his eyes. "You have been driving me crazy for months," I said. "I know." "Then explain why." Logan looked at me as if the answer terrified him more than anything I could possibly say afterward. His hand remained against the wall, but he stepped back half a pace, giving me even more space. "Because talking to you normally has never been easy for me." I stared at him. "That makes absolutely no sense." "I know that too." Somewhere behind us, laughter spilled from the event room before the door closed again. Logan glanced toward it, then back at me. "If you want me to leave, say it." I should have. At least, 6 months earlier I would have insisted that I would. Back then, Logan Hayes was simply the most irritating man at Mercer and Lane, the advertising agency where I worked as a graphic designer. I was 27, reasonably good at my job, perfectly capable of surviving a workday without somebody commenting on the number of color-coded folders on my desk. Logan, our 29-year-old senior account manager, disagreed. On his 3rd morning working with my team, he stopped beside my desk, looked at my carefully organized workspace, and said, "Do you alphabetize your emergencies too?" I looked up at him. "Only the ones involving account managers." He laughed so loudly that 2 people turned around. I assumed that would end it. Instead, apparently, I had encouraged him. The next morning, he appeared beside the coffee machine while I was filling my mug. "Black coffee again?" he asked. "Yes." "No cream?" "No." "No sugar?" Still no. Logan looked genuinely concerned. "Ethan, there are easier ways to tell everyone you have given up on joy." I took a sip without breaking eye contact. "Talking to you before 9 in the morning is one of the harder ways." His grin widened. That became our routine. He found something harmless to tease me about, and I found a reason to act annoyed. The problem was that somewhere along the way, I started expecting him. I knew approximately when Logan arrived because my attention automatically shifted toward the elevator around 8:45. I knew the sound of his laugh from across the office. I even noticed when he changed his usual blue tie for a dark green one, although I would rather have deleted every design file on my computer than admit that aloud. What I did not notice at first was something much more dangerous. Logan remembered things. Not important things people deliberately memorize, but tiny details I mentioned once and forgot. He knew which client meetings made me nervous. He knew I hated artificial vanilla creamer. He knew I called my mother every Wednesday evening. Once, after teasing me for bringing the same turkey sandwich 3 days in a row, he quietly left a takeout menu from my favorite deli beside my keyboard. No note. No joke. When I looked across the office, Logan was already watching me. He smiled, then immediately returned to his laptop. That should have been the moment I realized his teasing was never as simple as I wanted it to be. Instead, I told myself Logan treated everyone that way. It was easier than asking why I had started looking forward to being the person he bothered most. By the end of the first month, Logan had turned irritating me into something so predictable that I could practically schedule around it. At 8:45, the elevator doors opened. Within 5 minutes, he usually found a reason to pass my desk. By 10, he had commented on my coffee, my color-coded project folders, or whatever shirt I happened to be wearing. The strangest part was that he never crossed the line into being cruel. If I looked genuinely busy, he left me alone. If a client meeting went badly, the jokes disappeared completely. And whenever somebody else tried to embarrass me, Logan somehow became the most professional man in Chicago. I noticed that during a Thursday presentation, when one of our clients rejected a campaign concept I had spent nearly 2 weeks developing. The criticism itself was fair, but their marketing director kept directing every question at me as if I had personally invented the entire strategy. Before I could answer for the 4th time, Logan calmly leaned forward. "That decision came from the account team, including me," he said. "If there is a concern about strategy, I can walk everyone through our reasoning. His tone was polite, but the conversation immediately changed. Nobody singled me out again. After the meeting, I followed Logan into the hallway. You did not have to do that. He glanced at me. Do what? Take responsibility. I was responsible. You know what I mean. Logan stopped walking. There is a difference between teasing someone and letting them get blamed for something that was not entirely theirs. For once, I had no clever response. Logan seemed uncomfortable with my silence, because his familiar grin returned. Besides, if anybody is going to question your questionable artistic decisions, I have seniority. There he is, I said. I was worried you had been replaced by a decent person. Temporary malfunction. He walked away, leaving me smiling when I absolutely did not want to be. After that, I started paying closer attention. Logan teased other coworkers occasionally, but not the way he teased me. He did not remember that Melissa from accounting preferred peppermint tea or that Daniel hated meetings before 10. Yet when I arrived one Monday with a headache after barely sleeping, Logan took one look at me and lowered his voice. Bad morning. I am fine. That was not convincing. I am a designer, not an actor. 10 minutes later, a bottle of water and a plain bagel appeared beside my keyboard. I looked toward Logan's desk. He did not acknowledge me. I sent him a message asking whether he had left them. There. His reply arrived almost immediately. He claimed the office nutrition fairy had finally taken an interest in my survival. I stared at the message longer than necessary. That afternoon, Logan walked past my desk and tapped twice against the divider. Feeling better? Yes. Good. Your personality was almost pleasant this morning. It was alarming. Thank you for restoring balance. He smiled and kept walking. I watched him until he disappeared around the corner, then realized Melissa was watching me from 2 desks away. What? I asked. She raised one eyebrow. Nothing. That expression means something. I just think you two have a very specific way of communicating. We communicate through mutual irritation. Sure. I turned back to my monitor, determined to ignore her. Then the elevator opened at 8:45 the next morning, and before I even looked up, I caught myself smiling. That was when the problem became impossible to deny. Logan was still annoying me every day, but somewhere between the jokes and the small acts of kindness, annoyance had stopped being the reason I noticed when he arrived. The first time Logan stopped teasing me completely, I discovered that silence could be much more distracting than anything he said. It happened on a Tuesday night near the end of a campaign deadline. By 7:30, almost everyone at Mercer and Lane had gone home, leaving the office unusually quiet while rain streaked the windows above downtown Chicago. I was still at my desk adjusting a presentation for a client meeting the next morning, surviving on black coffee and the unreasonable belief that changing one more font size might somehow fix everything. Logan had been in a conference room for most of the evening. When he finally appeared beside my desk, I expected a comment about my inability to leave work at a reasonable hour. Instead, he looked at my screen and asked, "How long have you been staring at that slide?" I stopped counting. "When did you last eat?" That sounds unrelated. Ethan. Something about the way he said my name made me look at him. There was no grin. Lunch, I admitted. Logan checked the time. That was almost 7 hours ago. Thank you for the mathematical assistance. Stay here. Where would I go? He disappeared before I could ask what he meant. 20 minutes later, he returned carrying a paper bag from the deli 2 blocks away. He placed a turkey sandwich, chips, and bottled water beside my keyboard. I stared at the food, then at him. You remembered my order. Logan pulled the chair from the empty desk beside mine. You have ordered the same sandwich approximately 40 times. That is an exaggeration. 39 then. I smiled despite myself. Thank you. Eat before you redesign the entire campaign because your blood sugar has declared war on your judgment. I opened the sandwich while Logan studied the presentation. For the next hour, we worked without our usual routine. He helped me simplify the client notes, questioned 2 unnecessary slides, and listened when I explained why the visual concept mattered. He did not interrupt. He did not make a joke. He simply listened, and somehow that version of Logan made me more nervous than the one who spent every morning insulting my coffee. Around 9, I leaned back and looked at the finished presentation. That is actually better. You sound surprised. I am surprised you can go an entire hour without bothering me. Logan looked at me for a second too long. Maybe bothering you is easier. Easier than what? He glanced toward the windows. Rain reflected the city lights across the glass. Never mind. No, you do not get to say something mysterious after feeding me. Logan laughed quietly, but he still seemed different. You really want an answer? I asked. He turned the chair slightly toward me. Sometimes I cannot tell whether you actually like having me around. The question caught me completely unprepared. You make fun of me every morning. That was not an answer. Maybe I would notice if you stopped. Logan's expression softened. Would you? I suddenly became extremely interested in closing a file on my laptop. Do not make this weird. I am not making anything weird. Your face is making it weird. That finally brought back his familiar smile, but it was smaller than usual. There you are, I said. I was wondering where the annoying version went. Logan stood and pushed the chair back into place. You should go home, Ethan. You too. He collected the empty food containers and started toward the kitchen, then stopped. For what it is worth, I like being around you. Before I could decide how to respond, he walked away. I sat alone beneath the office lights, staring at the presentation without seeing a single word. Logan had spent months making me wonder why he bothered me so much. One sincere sentence had created a much worse problem. That night, for the first time, I wondered whether I had misunderstood him from the beginning. The next morning, Logan arrived at 8:45 exactly, and I hated that I knew the time without checking the clock. I waited for him to stop beside my desk, criticize my coffee, or pretend my neatly arranged folders were evidence of a serious personality disorder. Instead, he walked past me with a simple, "Morning, Ethan," and continued toward his office. I stared after him. Apparently, one sincere conversation had broken our entire routine. For the next several days, Logan remained friendly but noticeably careful. He still joined our meetings and asked about projects, but the constant teasing became lighter, almost cautious. I told myself I appreciated the peace. Unfortunately, peace was incredibly annoying. Then Noah Bennett joined our campaign team. Noah was 28, worked in digital strategy, and possessed the rare ability to enter a room without immediately finding something irritating to say about me. On his second day, he stopped beside my desk to ask about a set of graphics I had created. What started as a 5-minute conversation became 20 minutes about design, Chicago restaurants, and the unreasonable number of coffee shops claiming to have the city's best cold brew. There is a place near Millennium Park I have been meaning to try, Noah said. Want to grab coffee there sometime? The invitation was casual, but not so casual that I misunderstood it. Sure, I said. Maybe Friday. Friday works. When Noah walked away, I noticed Logan standing near the conference room with a folder in his hand. Our eyes met. For half a second, something changed in his expression. Then he smiled politely and disappeared into the room. That afternoon, he did not stop by my desk once. The next morning, he arrived at 8:46. I knew because I was watching the elevator, which was becoming embarrassing. Logan nodded when he saw me. Morning. That is it. I asked before I could stop myself. He paused. Was there supposed to be more? Usually you have some unnecessary observation about my coffee by now. Logan looked at my mug. Looks fine. Then he kept walking. I sat there feeling strangely offended by his maturity. At lunch, Melissa dropped into the chair beside my desk. You look irritated. I am working. You have been staring at the same email for 5 minutes. It is complicated. She glanced toward Logan's office. Is the complication approximately 6 feet tall and suddenly very quiet? I turned toward her. Why does everyone think Logan and I are some kind of office situation? Because you notice everything he does. I notice him because he is distracting. He has barely spoken to you for 3 days. Exactly. Melissa smiled in a way I did not appreciate. Friday afternoon, Noah and I walked to the coffee shop near Millennium Park. He was easy to talk to, thoughtful, funny without trying too hard, and clearly interested in me. By every reasonable standard, I should have been enjoying myself. Instead, when we returned to the office, the first thing I did was look toward Logan's desk. His chair was empty. He left for a client meeting, Melissa said without looking up from her computer. I did not ask. Of course not. Logan returned an hour later. He passed my desk without stopping. How was the coffee? He asked. His voice was perfectly neutral. Good. Glad to hear it. He continued walking. Something inside me tightened. I stood and followed him toward the conference rooms. Logan. He stopped. Yeah. What is going on with you? Nothing. You have spent months making it impossible for me to drink coffee without commentary, and now you are acting like we barely know each other. Logan's expression became guarded. I thought maybe I was bothering you. Since when has that stopped you? Since I realized maybe it should. The answer took the irritation out of me for a second. Is this because of Noah? Logan looked away. Who you have coffee with is none of my business. The words were reasonable. That was why they hurt. I forced myself to nod. Right, of course. I returned to my desk before he could see how much his answer affected me. And for the first time I had to consider a possibility I did not like at all. Maybe Logan had never been sending mixed signals. Maybe I had simply started hoping they meant something. For the rest of Friday, Logan and I became painfully professional with each other. He sent me 2 project emails that began with "Hi Ethan" and ended with "Thanks, Logan," which somehow felt more hostile than every joke he had made in 6 months. I answered with equally careful sentences and hated myself for noticing. By Monday morning, I had decided I was done trying to interpret him. If Logan wanted distance, I could give him distance. That plan survived approximately 20 minutes. During our campaign meeting, he took a seat across the table instead of beside me. Nobody else noticed. I noticed immediately. When I presented the revised graphics, Logan complimented the work without making a single comment about my obsessive alignment. "The client will like this direction," he said. "Nice work, Ethan." "Thank you." 2 normal words. Completely appropriate. Somehow unbearable. After the meeting, I caught him near the elevators. "Can we talk?" Logan glanced at his watch. "I have a call in 10 minutes. Then I only need 5. He hesitated before nodding toward an empty conference room. Once the door closed, I turned to him. "Did I do something?" His expression changed. "No." "Then why are you avoiding me?" "I am not avoiding you." "You moved seats." Logan blinked. "You noticed that?" I immediately regretted saying it. "That is not the point." "Then what is the point?" "The point is that you were one person for 6 months, and suddenly you are somebody else." Logan looked down at the conference table. Maybe I realized I was making things complicated. "For who?" He did not answer. My frustration sharpened. "Is this really because I had coffee with Noah?" "Ethan, I already told you that your personal life is none of my business." "Then stop acting like it bothers you." Logan's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed controlled. "What exactly do you want me to say?" "The truth would be useful. The truth is that I was probably bothering you more than I realized, so I stopped." "That is not what happened." "How would you know?" "Because you did not stop after I complained about you for months. You stopped after Noah asked me out." Silence filled the room. Logan looked toward the glass wall as people moved through the office outside. "You should go out with him if you want to," he said finally. I felt something sink inside me. That is still not an answer. It is the only one I can give you. "Why?" His eyes returned to mine, and for a moment I thought he might finally say whatever he had been holding back since that rainy night. Instead, he stepped toward the door. "I have a client call." "Of course you do." Logan stopped with his hand near the handle. "Ethan." "What?" "I am not trying to hurt you." The words surprised me enough that my anger slipped. "Then what are you trying to do?" He looked at me for several seconds. "The right thing." Then he left. I remained in the conference room alone, staring at the empty chair he had occupied. I should have felt relieved. Logan had given me the clearest message possible. Whatever existed between us was apparently something he believed needed to end before it started. So I stopped waiting for him at 8:45. I stopped listening for his laugh across the office. When Noah invited me to lunch again, I said yes. For several days, I convinced myself that was progress. Then Thursday afternoon, Mercer and Lane announced a small celebration for landing the campaign account we had spent months chasing. Everyone gathered after work in the event space upstairs. I arrived determined to enjoy myself without monitoring Logan. That determination lasted until I saw him near the windows talking to another coworker. I was too far away to hear most of their conversation, but as I passed behind them, one sentence reached me. Clearly, someone asked Logan why he never seemed interested when people tried to set him up. Logan gave a quiet laugh and answered, "Because there is already someone." I stopped walking. For one ridiculous second, hope returned so quickly it made me angry. Then Logan noticed me. The expression on his face told me he knew exactly what I had heard. He excused himself and headed toward the hallway. This time, I did not let silence decide what his words meant. I followed him. I caught up with Logan before he reached the elevators. "Who is it?" He stopped but kept his back to me. "Ethan, not here." "You said there is already someone." "You were not supposed to hear that." "That does not answer my question." Logan turned around. and the careful expression he had worn all week was gone. Why does it matter? I almost laughed because 6 months of frustration had finally reduced everything to one ridiculous question. Because you spent months making yourself part of my day. Then Noah asked me for coffee, and you suddenly decided we should act like strangers. You tell me my personal life is none of your business, but you look miserable whenever his name comes up. So yes, Logan, it matters. He glanced toward the event room. Can we talk somewhere quieter? I followed him farther down the hallway, where the music became a distant murmur. Logan stopped near a window overlooking the Chicago lights. I was trying to give you space. I never asked for space. You did not have to. There you go again, deciding what I mean without asking me. Logan exhaled and started to turn away. This is exactly why I should not have let things get complicated. Do not walk away from me. He stopped. When he faced me again, frustration and nervousness competed across his expression. He stepped closer, then planted one hand against the wall beside my shoulder as if he needed something solid to keep himself from leaving. He was near me, but he was not touching me, and the hallway remained completely open at my other side. Tell me you really want me to stop, Ethan. The words were the same ones that would stay in my memory afterward, but now I understood how we had reached them. Stop. What? I asked. The jokes. Finding excuses to come by your desk. Remembering your coffee. Looking for you every morning before I even put my bag down. My heartbeat seemed suddenly louder than the party behind us. Logan stepped back slightly. If all of that makes you uncomfortable, tell me, and it ends tonight. That is not what I asked. I know. Then answer me. Who is the someone? Logan looked directly at me. You. For several seconds, I genuinely forgot how conversation worked. Me? Yes. You have spent 6 months making fun of me because you like me? When you say it like that, it sounds incredibly stupid. There is no version where it sounds intelligent. A nervous laugh escaped him, but disappeared quickly. Talking to you normally makes me nervous. I stared at the man who could handle demanding clients without blinking. You negotiate 6-figure campaigns for a living. Clients are easy. And I am difficult. You matter. That silenced me. Logan lowered his hand from the wall and moved another step back. That night we worked late. I almost told you. Then I convinced myself I was reading too much into everything. When Noah asked you out, I thought backing off was the right thing. It was confusing. I know that now. No, Logan. It was confusing before that too. His expression fell. I am sorry. There was no joke hiding behind the apology. I should have been honest. I folded my arms, not because I was angry anymore, but because I needed something to do with them. How long? How long what? How long have you liked me? Logan hesitated. Longer than you think. Something in his tone made me narrow my eyes. What does that mean? He looked toward the dark window, then back at me. Do you remember your first week at Mercer and Lane, when you told Melissa that dating someone from work was the worst idea imaginable? I remembered the conversation immediately. I had been talking about a former coworker's disastrous breakup. You heard that. Every word. Logan gave me a small, embarrassed smile. That was the day I decided I was never going to tell you. Unfortunately, it was also around the time I realized I wanted to. For a moment, all I could do was stare at Logan. 6 months of jokes suddenly rearranged themselves in my memory, each one looking different now that I knew what had been hiding underneath. So you heard one conversation and decided I would never date anyone from work? I asked. Logan gave a small nod. You sounded pretty certain. I was talking about Derek from our old production team. He dated his supervisor. They broke up, and then they spent 3 months arguing through project emails. I did not know that part. Because you heard half a conversation. Apparently, I have terrible timing. Apparently, you also have a talent for making major decisions with incomplete information. Logan accepted that without arguing. That is fair. I leaned against the opposite wall, keeping several feet between us while I tried to understand how something so complicated had grown from something so simple. Then why start teasing me? I did not plan it. That is reassuring. His mouth almost curved into a smile. The first time I joked about your desk, you came back with that line about account managers. You made me laugh. After that, talking to you that way felt easy. So your brilliant solution was to annoy me indefinitely. It was not brilliant. We agree again. Logan looked down for a moment. I thought I could keep it harmless. I could talk to you, make you laugh occasionally, and never put you in an uncomfortable position. That explanation should have made everything simpler. Instead, It made my chest feel strangely tight. You thought I laughed? Sometimes. I was usually laughing at you. I was willing to take what I could get. I shook my head, but I could not stop a smile from appearing. Logan noticed it immediately. Of course he did. Do not look encouraged, I warned him. I am trying very hard not to. You are failing. His smile faded as quickly as it came. Ethan, I need you to know something. When Noah asked you out, I was jealous. I did not like feeling that way, especially when you had never promised me anything. That is why I backed off. I thought giving you space was more respectful than making my feelings your problem. Except you never told me what you were doing. I know. So I spent days wondering whether I had imagined everything. Logan's face tightened with regret. I am sorry. I handled it badly. That mattered more than I expected. He did not defend himself. He did not turn the moment into a joke. He simply owned it. And Noah, he asked carefully. What about him? Do you like him? I considered the question. Noah was kind, interesting, and easy to talk to. But sitting across from him at that coffee shop, I had spent half the time wondering why Logan had not spoken to me. He is a good guy, I said. Logan nodded, trying unsuccessfully to hide his disappointment. Then I will stay out of the way. You are doing it again. Doing what? Deciding the ending before I finished talking. He looked at me. Noah is a good guy, I repeated, but I do not think I went a coffee with him because I wanted something serious. I think part of me wanted to see whether you cared. Logan blinked. That is not exactly healthy either. I know. So we both handled this badly. Congratulations. We finally found something we are equally talented at. He laughed, and the familiar sound loosened something inside me. Then I became serious. If this is real, Logan, I cannot keep guessing. No more disappearing because you think you know what I want. No more hiding important things behind jokes. Okay. And teasing me does not count as communication. That rule feels personally targeted. I gave him a look. Okay. He repeated, more sincerely. I can do that. I studied him for another moment. Good. Logan hesitated. What happens now? For 6 months, he had always been the one keeping me off balance. For once, I knew exactly what I wanted to say. Now you ask me out properly. Logan stared at me as if I had just handed him the answer to a question he had been afraid to ask for months. Properly, he repeated. Yes. You know, using actual words instead of insulting my coffee until I somehow understand your romantic intentions. He looked genuinely embarrassed. When you describe it that way, I sound terrible at this. You are terrible at this. Good to know. For a second, the old Logan returned, but then his expression softened. He stood a comfortable distance away and took a breath. Ethan Cole, would you like to have dinner with me Saturday night? I pretended to consider it. Is this a real date? Very real. No client meetings? None. No co-workers accidentally joining us? Absolutely not. And you are going to behave like a normal person? Logan hesitated. I cannot promise miracles. I laughed before I could stop myself. Then yes. The relief on his face was so obvious that something warm settled in my chest. We returned to the celebration separately, not because we were hiding anything, but because neither of us was ready to explain why a 10-minute hallway conversation had changed the entire atmosphere between us. Noah found me near the refreshments and asked whether I wanted to get coffee again the following week. I owed him honesty. I had a good time Friday, I said, but I think I have been sorting out feelings for someone else. Noah studied me for half a second, then glanced across the room toward Logan. I had a suspicion. Was it that obvious? Only to everyone except the 2 people involved. I groaned. Noah laughed and told me there were no hard feelings. When I looked across the room again, Logan was talking to Melissa, carefully pretending not to watch me. I raised an eyebrow. He immediately looked away. Saturday evening, Logan met me outside a small Italian restaurant in River North. I had seen him dressed for client dinners dozens of times, but this felt different because there was no office between us. You are early, I said. 3 minutes. That counts. I was nervous. His honesty caught me off guard. You could have made a joke. You told me to use actual words. I might regret establishing that rule. Dinner was surprisingly easy. Without the office routine, I learned things about Logan that teasing had hidden. He had grown up outside Milwaukee, called his younger sister every Sunday, loved terrible mystery movies, and secretly hated networking events despite being excellent at them. In return, I told him about studying design in Minneapolis, moving to Chicago after graduation, and the reason I organized everything when I was stressed. After dinner, we walked several blocks along the river. The November air was cold enough that both of us kept our hands in our coat pockets. Logan eventually said, "Can I ask you something?" "You just did." He sighed. "There is the Ethan I know." "Go ahead. When did you start liking me?" I looked toward the lights reflecting across the Chicago River. "I do not know. That is suspiciously convenient. Maybe it happened slowly. The sandwich. The client meeting. The fact that you remembered things I forgot telling you." Logan was quiet. "Or maybe," I continued, "I realized it when you stopped bothering me and the office suddenly felt wrong." He smiled. "So my greatest romantic achievement was becoming an irritating habit. Do not ruin the moment." "Sorry." We reached the corner where our routes separated. Logan did not move closer or assume anything. He simply asked, "Can I see you again?" There was something unexpectedly vulnerable about hearing the confident Logan Hayes ask instead of guess. "Yes," I said, "but Monday morning still counts." His smile widened. 8:45. Do not push it. Yet when Monday came, I found myself watching the elevator again, except this time I no longer had to pretend I did not know exactly who I was waiting for. At 8:45 Monday morning, the elevator doors opened and Logan stepped into the office carrying his usual coffee and messenger bag. Our eyes met immediately. For months, that moment had started a game neither of us understood. This time, Logan simply smiled. "Morning, Ethan." "Morning." He glanced at the black coffee beside my keyboard. "I have several thoughts about that. Keep them to yourself. I am respecting boundaries. I appreciate your sacrifice." He laughed and continued toward his office, and I realized something important had changed. The teasing had not disappeared. It had become something we both understood and could stop whenever either of us wanted. Over the next few weeks, we kept our relationship quiet at work while we figured out what it actually was. There were dinners in neighborhood restaurants, Sunday walks along Lake Michigan, and one spectacularly terrible mystery. Movie Logan insisted was a misunderstood classic. Outside the office, I discovered he was less confident than he appeared. He overthought restaurant reservations, worried about disappointing people, and sometimes started sentences 3 times before saying what he actually meant. I also discovered that honesty did not magically make everything easy. One Thursday, Logan canceled dinner because a client meeting ran late. My first instinct was to assume he was pulling away again. Instead of letting that assumption grow, I called him. "Are we okay?" I asked. There was a pause. "Yes." "Why would we not be?" "Because you canceled." "Ethan, I am standing in a conference room with 12 pages of revisions and a sandwich I have not had time to eat." I felt ridiculous. "So this is actually work?" "Unfortunately." Then his voice softened. "But I am glad you asked instead of deciding for me." That sentence stayed with me. We had both spent months interpreting silence instead of asking simple questions. Now we were learning that trust was less dramatic than guessing, but much more useful. The next evening, Logan showed up at the small diner near my apartment and placed a paper bag on the table. "What is that?" "Emergency compensation." Inside was a turkey sandwich from my favorite deli. I looked at him. "You realize feeding me the same sandwich repeatedly is not a personality." "It worked the first time." "Did it?" "You agreed to date me eventually." "Your understanding of cause and effect is concerning for someone who manages major accounts." Logan smiled. "You like me anyway." I opened my mouth with an automatic comeback, then stopped. "Yes," I said. His smile disappeared for half a second, replaced by genuine surprise. I had never said it that plainly before. "I like you too," he answered. No joke followed. Neither of us needed one. A month later, we finally told Melissa. She listened with an expression so calm that I became suspicious. "You already knew," I said. "Ethan, you used to complain whenever Logan bothered you, then complain whenever he did not bother you." Logan looked delighted. "That is incredibly romantic. Do not encourage her." Melissa laughed and returned to her computer. Life at Mercer and Lane continued almost exactly as before, except now Logan occasionally left coffee beside my keyboard without pretending it came from a nutrition fairy. We remained careful and professional during work hours, and if either of us felt uncomfortable, we said so. One morning, I entered a meeting and noticed Logan heading toward his usual chair across the table. Without thinking too much about it, I pulled out the empty chair beside mine. Logan stopped. "Is that for me?" "Do not make this a thing." He sat down, clearly trying not to smile. "I would never." I looked at him. That might be the least convincing thing you have ever said. The meeting began, and beneath the table Logan shifted his chair an inch closer. Months earlier, I would have wondered what it meant. Now I already knew. By the time Logan and I had been dating for 2 months, I thought we had finally learned how to stop turning assumptions into problems. Then Mercer and Lane offered him a promotion. He told me on a Wednesday evening while we were sitting in a small restaurant near my apartment, halfway through dinner. They want me to lead the West Coast account team, he said. I lowered my fork. That sounds important. It is. And good. Logan hesitated. That hesitation brought back every old instinct I had been trying to unlearn. Where's the West Coast team? I asked. Seattle. I stared at him. Seattle is about 2,000 miles from Chicago. I know. When did you find out? This afternoon. I waited for the familiar panic to arrive. The voice telling me that Logan was already preparing to leave and had only told me because he had to. Instead, I remembered our promise. Ask. Do not assume. Do you want the job? Logan looked relieved by the question. Professionally, yes. Personally, I do not know. Because of us. Because I finally have something here that matters more than a title. The answer warmed me, but it also bothered me for a different reason. You cannot turn it down just because you think that is what I want. I did not say I would. You were thinking it. He smiled faintly. You know me too well. That is becoming inconvenient. We talked for nearly an hour. No dramatic promises. No sacrifice disguised as romance. Logan admitted the promotion was an opportunity he had wanted for years, but the company had also mentioned a possible Chicago leadership position opening later in the spring. Nothing was guaranteed. For the first time, neither of us tried to decide the future alone. Ask them for time, I said, and ask about the Chicago position. What if Seattle is the only offer? Then we talk again. Logan studied me. That's simple. Probably not. But talking is simple. 2 days later, he requested a meeting with the managing director. The following week felt longer than it should have. Logan did not pretend he was calm, and I did not pretend I was unaffected. We kept going to work, kept having dinner, kept making plans that extended only as far as we could honestly promise. On Friday afternoon, Logan appeared beside my desk at 4:30 with an expression I could not read. Conference room? He asked. That sounds ominous. Trust me. Inside, he closed the door and handed me a printed page. I asked questions instead of assuming. I scanned the document. Mercer and Lane had offered him an interim leadership role in Chicago for 6 months, with the possibility of making it permanent if the new account structure succeeded. I looked up. You wanted this? I wanted the responsibility. I never specifically wanted Seattle. So you are staying. I am choosing the Chicago role because it is the job I actually want. He paused. Being here with you is a very significant bonus. Good answer. I practiced. I laughed, but Logan remained serious. 2 months ago, I would have made this decision alone because I would have been afraid of putting pressure on you. And I would have assumed your hesitation meant you were leaving me. We were exhausting. We still are. Fair. He reached toward me, then paused in the familiar way he had learned to do. I offered my hand first. His fingers closed gently around mine. That small gesture meant more to me than the dramatic misunderstandings that had brought us together. Logan had once believed caring about someone meant hiding his feelings so they would never become a burden. I had believed protecting myself meant interpreting every silence before someone could disappoint me. Neither habit had disappeared overnight. We were simply learning to catch them sooner. When we left the conference room, Logan glanced at my desk and noticed my untouched black coffee. You know, he said, leadership has given me a new perspective. On what? That coffee is still deeply depressing. I smiled. There you are. And this time, when he teased me, neither of us had to wonder what was underneath it. The strange thing about finally understanding Logan was that I started noticing how often he had been protecting himself long before I knew there was anything to protect. 3 months into our relationship, his new leadership role became official enough that people began treating him differently at the office. More meetings appeared on his calendar. Senior executives stopped by his desk. Coworkers who once joked casually with him suddenly measured their words. Logan handled the attention with his usual confidence, but I could see the tension underneath it. One Tuesday evening, I found him alone in a conference room after everyone else had gone home. Chicago was glowing beyond the windows, and Logan was staring at a spreadsheet as though it had personally offended him. You have been looking at that same page for 10 minutes, I said. He glanced up. Were you timing me? I learned from an expert. That sounds dangerous. I sat across from him. What is wrong? Nothing. I raised an eyebrow. Logan sighed. I am worried people will think I got this role because I am good at talking instead of because I am good at the work. That was not what I expected. Logan, you manage impossible clients without losing your mind. That is because I lose it privately. Very efficient. He smiled, but I could tell he was still carrying something heavier. You know what is funny, he said. I used to think confidence meant never letting anyone see when I was unsure. That explains a lot, including the 6 months of terrible flirting, especially that. He laughed softly. Then he looked at me with an openness that would have been almost impossible for him a few months earlier. I do not want to do that anymore. Then do not. You make everything sound simple. No, I just think complicated feelings still deserve simple sentences. Logan closed the laptop. Fine. Simple sentence. I am scared I will fail. I leaned back in my chair. Simple answer. You might. He stared at me. That was incredibly supportive. I am serious. You might make mistakes. That does not mean you were the wrong choice. His expression changed. How did you get so reasonable? Dating you has forced tremendous personal growth. There he is. We left the office together 20 minutes later and walked toward the train station in the cold evening air. At the corner, Logan stopped. Dinner tomorrow? I have that design review until 7. Thursday. My mother calls Thursday this week because she has plans Wednesday. Logan nodded. Friday. Friday works. He smiled. Look at us. Scheduling like emotionally functional adults. Do not celebrate too early. The following Friday, we went to the same Italian restaurant where we had our first real date. Halfway through dinner, Logan reached into his coat pocket and placed a small key on the table. I looked at it, then at him. What is that? My apartment key. I understand the concept of keys. I thought you might want one. My chest tightened, not from fear exactly, but from the significance of the offer. Logan immediately noticed. You do not have to take it. Months earlier, he might have interpreted my silence and withdrawn the offer before I could respond. This time, he waited. I picked up the key. I want it. Logan smiled. Simple sentence. Do not get smug. Too late. I slipped the key into my pocket, realizing that our relationship had stopped being defined by dramatic revelations. Now it was built from quieter choices, asking instead of guessing, waiting instead of assuming, and trusting the other person enough to answer honestly. For two men who had once needed 6 months to admit they liked each other, a small silver key felt like remarkable progress. By early spring, the key to Logan's apartment had stopped feeling unusual on my key ring. I used it, mostly on evenings when he was trapped in late meetings and I arrived before him, usually with takeout and enough patience to hear exactly why some client had changed a campaign direction for the 4th time. Logan had also learned that giving me access to his apartment did not mean I wanted to move in immediately. That conversation happened because, for once, he asked instead of guessing. Do you ever think about us living together? He said one Sunday morning while we drank coffee near his kitchen window. I nearly spilled mine. That was subtle. I have been practicing direct communication. You may have overcorrected. Logan smiled. I am not asking you to move in tomorrow. I am asking whether you think about it. I looked around his apartment. My spare phone charger was beside his couch. One of my sweaters had somehow migrated into his closet. There were groceries in his refrigerator that he never bought before dating me. Evidence of us had quietly appeared everywhere. Yes, I admitted. I think about it. Logan nodded, looking relieved. Me too. But not yet. Not yet, he agreed. There was no disappointment, no attempt to negotiate. That simple acceptance mattered. A few weeks later, Mercer and Lane confirmed Logan's Chicago leadership position permanently. The office celebrated with cake in the break room, and Melissa made a speech about how Logan had finally found a professional use for talking too much. I told her she was doing important work. Logan informed both of us that leadership required him to ignore disrespect from junior employees. You have been promoted for 3 hours, I said. Power changes people quickly. He laughed, and for a moment, everything felt almost ordinary. That was when I understood how much I had changed too. Months earlier, I had measured our connection through tension. I noticed every look, every silence, every joke because I was searching for hidden meaning. Now Logan could spend an entire afternoon in meetings without speaking to me, and I did not invent a story about why. I trusted that if something was wrong, he would tell me. More importantly, I trusted myself enough to ask. One evening after work, we walked toward the river while the last cold weeks of Chicago winter finally gave way to warmer air. Logan was unusually quiet. Simple sentence, I reminded him. He glanced at me. What? You are thinking too loudly. He smiled, then became serious. I was thinking about that hallway. I knew immediately which one. Not exactly our finest communication. No, but I keep wondering what would have happened if you had not followed me. I considered it. You probably would have kept pretending you were doing the noble thing. And you? I probably would have kept pretending I did not care. That sounds miserable. We were very talented at making ourselves miserable. Logan laughed softly. We stopped near the railing, watching lights ripple across the Chicago River. I am glad you followed me, he said. I am glad you finally answered. He looked at me with the same expression I had once been unable to read. Now it seemed almost painfully clear. I love you, Ethan. There was no dramatic build-up, no joke protecting the words, no misunderstanding waiting behind them. Just Logan saying exactly what he meant. I felt my smile arrive before my answer. I love you too. Logan exhaled as though he had been holding that breath for months. You know, for two people who work in communication, we were unbelievably bad at it. Speak for yourself. I make graphics. Of course. Blame account management. Finally, something we can agree on. We started walking again, shoulder to shoulder, and I realized the best thing about us was no longer the uncertainty that had once made every interaction exciting. It was knowing that neither of us had to hide behind uncertainty anymore. By the beginning of summer, I no longer checked the clock at 8:45. I did not need to. Most mornings, I heard Logan before I saw him, usually greeting someone near the elevators before making his way across the office. That Monday, I was already in the conference room preparing for our weekly meeting when he walked through the door. His eyes went immediately to the chair beside mine. I had left it empty on purpose. Reserved, he asked. Maybe. For someone important. Do not make me move it. Logan sat down, smiling. Nearly a year had passed since he first made fun of my perfectly organized desk, and 6 months had passed since one confusing hallway conversation finally forced both of us to stop hiding behind assumptions. We were still ourselves. Logan still believed black coffee was evidence of emotional damage. I still believed his habit of arriving 3 minutes early to everything was unnecessarily dramatic. We still disagreed about movies, restaurants, and whether my apartment needed more than 3 decorative pillows. But the difference was simple. None of those things had to carry secret meanings anymore. After the meeting, Logan followed me back toward my desk. Dinner tonight, he asked. Your place or mine? Mine. Unless you want to spend another evening explaining why your oven makes that noise. My oven has character. Your oven needs professional help. I sat down and looked up at him. 7. He started to leave, then turned back. By the way, your coffee looks particularly depressing today. I smiled. There it is. That evening, I arrived at Logan's apartment before him and used the key he had given me months earlier. Dinner was nothing special. Just takeout on the kitchen counter while Chicago traffic moved below the windows. Somewhere between discussing work and arguing about what to watch, Logan became unexpectedly quiet. I recognized the expression now. Simple sentence, I said. He laughed. You still do that? It works. Logan set down his drink. All right. I am happy. I waited. That is the entire sentence. Mostly. He looked around the apartment, then back at me. I used to think relationships were supposed to feel more dramatic than this. You created enough drama for both of us at the beginning. Fair. His smile softened. But this is better. I understood exactly what he meant. The ordinary evenings had become my favorite part. There was no guessing whether Logan would call tomorrow. No wondering what a joke meant. No pretending I did not care. Just two people choosing each other repeatedly in ways that were almost boring from the outside and incredibly meaningful from where I stood. Months later, when my lease came up for renewal, Logan did not leave an apartment listing on my desk or disguise the question inside a joke. He asked me directly whether I was ready to live together. I said yes. On moving day, Melissa helped carry boxes and discovered that Logan had cleared an entire corner of the new office space for my design equipment. He organized it by category, she told me. I looked at Logan. You mocked my organizational system for months. Personal growth. Hypocrisy. Love, he corrected. I tried not to smile and failed. The following Monday, we rode the elevator to work together. Just before the doors opened, Logan glanced at me. Did you actually hate me when we first met? Sometimes. That is not reassuring. I hated how much I waited for you to show up. He went completely quiet. For once, I had managed to leave Logan Hayes without a comeback. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped into the office first. After several feet, I realized he had not moved. I turned around. Are you coming? Logan smiled and followed me. A year earlier, I had spent every morning pretending his arrival meant nothing. Now, as he fell into step beside me, I finally understood that love had not begun with one dramatic moment. It had begun quietly, hidden inside ordinary mornings, remembered details, terrible jokes, and two people slowly learning that the truth became much easier once they stopped being afraid to say it.